Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. Dan Proft, co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. with Amy Jacobson. Joining me to co-host this edition is Ted Dabrowski, who's the president of wirepoints.com. And Ted, we're back in LaSalle County again. LaSalle County gave us our current Illinois Auditor General. His name is Frank Martino. He was a state rep for 20 years following his dad. And he's under federal investigation for campaign finance irregularities, like paying a couple $100,000 over the course of a decade or so to the same local auto body shop for car repairs out of his campaign fund, and
some small amounts,
thousands of dollars for the same restaurant out of his campaign fund. You know, you're not supposed to be able to use campaign cash for personal purchases, right? Martino, I don't know what the federal government's doing. I don't know why it takes so long to investigate these things, but nothing's happened on that front, so he's still there. Jerry Long is a Republican incumbent there. He's being challenged by a Democrat named Lance Yednock. And now we have another campaign finance irregularity that's been brought to our attention by the Edgar County Watchdogs. And for more on this latest curious case of campaign financing in LaSalle County, we're pleased to be joined by one of the Edgar County Watchdogs, one of the founders. He is Kirk Allen. Kirk, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
But before we get to the specifics of this complaint against this Democrat state legislative candidate, Lance Yednock, just give us give our listeners a quick backstory in the Edgar County Watchdogs, because you and John Kraft, a couple of retirees, are sort of blazing an anti-corruption trail throughout state and local government in Illinois, and just a handle on what you've been able to do by asking a couple of simple questions and using our FOIA laws.
So basically, we always ask, says who and with what proof.
Love it.
And we focus on nothing more than accountability to the law, because the law doesn't know any political party. And through utilization of FOIA in the last roughly 5 years that we've really been hitting it hard, we now have 318 public officials that have been outed from office due to exposure through this process.
That's incredible. And I just love it. So elegant in its simplicity. Says who and what evidence. And that can unravel a lot of corruption. It's great. And so give us the specifics of this latest complaint you filed against this Democrat state legislative candidate, Lance Yednock. And it involves, ironically, we're talking about LaSalle County, which is about an hour and a half south of Chicago, but it involves an individual who's on the Water Reclamation District in Chicago.
Well, actually, Julie Eister, an attorney there in LaSalle County, filed the complaint. And on appearance, we've got Friends of Madigan putting a very large sum of money into one campaign, and then shortly thereafter, that same exact amount is transferred to another campaign. And, it appears that it was a way of shuffling money to, whatever candidates. But when it comes to our state board of elections, I don't hold a whole lot of confidence they're going to ever be able to do anything, because they could never come to any conclusion that Frank Martino did anything wrong.
Yeah, so, it begs the question, can we really follow the money when we see all these kind of tricks playing? And again, it can happen on both sides of the aisle, right? And so we're always left wondering, and money's fungible, which is what they like to use as their excuse. So can we really figure out what's going on? And do you think there's a hot iron here?
Well, I think what's interesting, the Friends of Madigan donation was reported as coming in on 3/19 of this year for $55,400. Well, interestingly, there's an exact duplicate amount being received that came in from the 13th Ward Democratic Organization. And I suspect their argument is going to be, oh, the $55,400 that was later transferred, that was the money from the Ward Democrat, not from, friends of Mike Madigan. And since they didn't have that in the original complaint, they'll say, well, you'll have to file a new complaint. And it just gets down to finding reasons why not to address the problem instead of actually doing their job and holding people accountable.
Well, let's just do the 1, 2, 3 here, because you have a cutout problem or perhaps situation here. Madigan contributes $55,400 to Friends of Marty Durkin, this MWRD guy in Chicago. Then he accepts the contribution. Then he turns around and writes a check to Lance Yednock, the state Democrat candidate in LaSalle County, for $55,400. So, there's two issues. One is the issue of using a cutout to transfer campaign cash. The second is, in addition to that, you point out that the total contribution made to Yednock was actually in excess of the $55,400 limit, so there's a contribution violation. But talk about the cutout thing for a second. Why would Madigan want to use a cutout? And under Illinois law, is it a problem to use a cutout? We know under federal election law it is. Dinesh D'Souza got convicted of a felony, had to have a sentence commuted for doing that. What about Illinois law?
I'd have to do some more research on that, Dan. I'm not real up on that type of a cutout in comparison to the federal.
But why would he do that? Politically speaking, transparency purposes, why use a cutout? Why not just Madigan? Why not just have Madigan make the contribution to Lance Yednock? What do you think's going on here with your sort of political instincts about how things work?
Boy, that's a really deep question.
Well, let me
suggest
something. Let me suggest that in LaSalle County, Grundy County area, Mike Madigan's not real popular. And so you don't want Mike Madigan showing up on your D2s. You want somebody, Marty Durkin, showing up in your D2s nobody's ever heard of. So then you can't make an issue of Mike Madigan being the financier of the Democrat candidate for state representative down there.
Right. That would make total sense.
Well, which brings the whole issue of how these monies flow, right? Because of limits of individuals, right? You throw them all through the Madigan campaign, and then they're distributed in smart ways throughout the rest of the state, which is just how we get to our cronyism that we're so good at in Illinois.
Right. I mean, the Illinois Leaks, which is your website, IllinoisLeaks.com, the Edgar County Watchdogs site. I mean, the headline is alleged money laundering complaint filed against the Friends of Michael J. Madigan campaign committee. And so that's what this is. This is laundering money through a cutout to get to a candidate and then trying to protect that candidate from having to wear the jacket of being financed by Madigan. What else would it be?
Oh, I don't think it can be anything other than that, personally.
And with your focus, not just this campaign season, but generally, I mean, is most of the work, does it turn out to be follow the money when it comes to what politicians are doing and those 300 some odd local officials you forced out of office?
Yeah, more often than not, it's follow the money. It's either direct money to them or it's power through, the nepotism and being able to put their friends and family in certain positions.
The interesting thing that this ties into is unrelated, but same thing is about a year or so ago, we did a study of Madigan's rules in the legislature, and it's amazing how this is the same thing, right? They adapt the rules, change the rules, manipulate the rules in order to get everything in favor for them, and they're doing the same thing with monies. And so when you combine the money power with the legislative power and the ability to block laws or make laws, it becomes amazing how much power he has. And if you like the status quo, then you love exactly these kind of money flows. And if you hate the status quo, you know what you're supposed to go after. And I think that's what Edgar's doing.
Right. And Madigan's obviously sophisticated enough to understand where he's not popular, which is everywhere outside of his state legislative district. And so he's got to finance the operations. He's got to be the money guy to protect his power and standing, to continue to create the dependency for his caucus members. But he doesn't, but he needs to protect them from the boogeyman politics that that he plays against Republicans, linking Republicans to Ron or linking Republicans to Trump, where there's Republicans that are not popular, right? I mean, that's what the state has become. It's all like boogeyman politics, and both Republicans and Democrats playing it, and so much less substantive. And this is why I think you have a difficulty changing the status quo, because you're asking people to pick between boogeymen rather than pick a better path for their lives here. You know what I mean? But
right.
But I appreciate the work that obviously the Edgar County Watchdogs, Kirk, you and John are doing. And do you have any previews of what may be upcoming? Who is in your crosshairs next?
Keep your eyes on DuPage Township in Will County. The thousands and thousands of dollars of corruption that we're getting ready to expose there is pretty. It makes Algonquin look like Mickey Mouse.
Okay, all right. The Algonquin Township Highway Department. We've talked about that at length. He is Kirk Allen. He's one of the co-founders of the Edgar County Watchdogs. You can visit their work and support their efforts, which have been really unbelievably successful in rooting out corruption, more so than, say, our state attorney general. The IllinoisLeaks.com is the Edgar County Watchdogs site. Kirk Allen, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Have a good day.